Hi, so this video is about the subconscious and kind of a prerequisite for hypnosis, neuro-linguistic programming. My name is Wiley Joseph Dollinger III. Students of Truth, please like and subscribe. If you have any questions, comments, or anything, please, I encourage you to say so. One of the most fascinating things that I've studied is the psychoanalysis or the clinical aspect of hypnosis and the phenomena of hypnosis. So the history goes back at least as far as Paracelcus with animal magnetism. And you have to understand that at that time, medical advancement, medical technology was still very brutal, and they still did things like bloodletting and very painful as far as aphrodisiacs and stuff like that. Very primitive back in the 15th century, so the 1400s. And Paracelsus did something called animal magnetism, but it was actually hypnosis. And he would hypnotize people even to be able to command them that that he was going to cut them, and that he would tell them not to bleed. And so the thing is that while they were under hypnosis, they actually would not bleed. And so he would perform surgeries, and his patients had remarkable recovery rates and no pain. It was like this astronomical thing that it's a big deal for, and the history of it for Benjamin Franklin and King Henry, and all this history, but this was hypnosis, and it was this remarkable thing. And because of the way that history worked, it kind of got pushed under with, instead of going to the medical advancement, it got classified with mysticism. But nonetheless, the history is absolutely remarkable, and so it has to do with the subconscious of every human being. And so, skipping ahead to history to the 1970s, two computer scientists at the University of California wanted to map essentially the human mind and began working on artificial intelligence. Well, the approach that they took was clinicians and family therapy and psychoanalysis was very popular at the time in the 1970s, but they discovered that there were some clinicians that had remarkable, phenomenal results for their clients consistently and fast, that the clients that these clinicians would see would have great results fast, consistently, and that the majority of therapy patients and stuff would be going to therapy for years and years and years, and comparatively not really seeing any results. So they took these three clinicians, these three therapists. One of them's named Dr. Rebecca Satire, and her book became the first book published in this Neuro-Linguistics. I think it's called The Art of Magic, Volume 1. But what they discovered these fascinating things, and so up comes hypnosis again, and the subconscious and how this works. And so now today it's like you can go to local comedy clubs and see hypnosis, do this stage hypnosis. That's one aspect of hypnosis, but also there's this connected to phenomenology. So when we look back, even in our own lifetime or generation before us, Dolores Cannon, the phenomenon that she discovered, because she was a family clinician for, I think, 40 or 50 years, but 10 years or so into it, and she adopted hypnosis for her, just a regular family practice. But she discovered that under hypnosis, and she developed her own method, which is actually now taught by her daughter, Julia Cannon, QHHT, Quantum Healing Hypnosis Therapy. But she discovered, and she's written over 15 books, discovered that all people under hypnosis, there was one voice, like one knowledge, one authority that spoke through all people on this certain level of hypnosis. But all of these phenomena, and so there's some very peculiar characteristics in the study of hypnosis that absolutely correlate with the study of spiritualism and our higher self, our subconscious, our conscious, and there, of course, the evolution of consciousness. And so that is particularly what I study. So, the Rosicrucian and Hermetic alchemy and consciousness, right? And our higher self, our inner eye. But the clinician or the clinical aspect and study of that, the subconscious, they discovered some very peculiar things, and it's irrefutable and true for every human being. So I want to share those things with everyone, because having a better understanding of how that works can have profound implications on your an individual's practical life on a practical level. So the way it works, and I've heard things discussed, or little memes or whatever that you see now and then, but actually understanding how this works, and that it's intrinsic for every human being on earth, right? Like our subconscious, which is actually our higher self. So some very peculiar characteristics, like there's absolutely no emotion or feeling whatsoever. Absolutely no understanding of emotion. There's no discernment. So you will hear people say they look at it actually from a clinician perspective, like they're dumb, but it's that they have no discernment. They're completely trusting. It will do anything that you say. Okay, so there's different levels of hypnosis. How it's actually a somnambulistic state that people go into, is what you call hypnosis. Somnambulistic state, and there's different levels. It's also like what sleepwalking is and stuff. That's a somnambulistic state. So, or when you black out, drink. So anything where you're doing stuff and whatever, but you have absolutely no recollection of it. Have absolutely no recollection of this action and consciousness that you do and act. But when you wake up or come to, you have no recollection of it. That's called a somnambulistic state. And so that's what hypnosis is. His therapist will put you under hypnosis, and you recollect these things. One of the things that Dolores Cannon exploited or explained or discovered or propagated, written 15 books about, was past life regressions, and how individuals under the somnambulistic state could recollect their past lives and have these vivid memories, and could deal with, it goes into the reincarnation, and it's very profound, very prolific study, actually. So and some of the things that she discovered, and talking about the 3 waves of volunteers coming to the planet Earth, and that we are these spiritual beings having a human experience. We are, in my own words, we're an immaculate, intrinsic, intelligent piece of light, our inner eye, and to personify unconditional love and unity, and the Hermetic principles, polarity and correspondence and cause and effects and all these things. But hypnosis, so there's absolutely no emotion, and they will there's no discernment. Do anything that you tell them to do. So you can actually hypnotize somebody and tell them to go do some horrible thing, rob a bank or murder somebody or their best friend or anything like that, and they will do that and have absolutely no emotion of it either. Of course, if you bring them out of this somnambulistic state, this hypnotic state, they'll recollect it in our cognitive, waking consciousness, right? Our daytime consciousness. So it's our consciousness and our subconsciousness. So no emotion, no will, and no discernment, completely trusting, but they have no ambition. There's no ambition of its own. The subconscious has no ambition, no will of its own, but it will do anything that you tell it to do, and it's absolutely no emotion. it's this wild phenomenon that's true for everybody. So, but it records everything that we've ever done and remembers every details that never have paid attention to or would imagine that we can remember, but in our subconscious remembers all of these things that it's constantly taking in all information from all directions constantly and remembers all of it. In our subconsciousness, we can be hypnotized and recollect every detail from every experience we've had from the time of our first memories when we identified as an I, actually. So from this incarnation. And again, like with Dolores Cannon and quantitative healing, hypnosis back into past life regressions and different things like that. So, but the way that it works, because it's taking in information all the time, all the information all the time, it really is, it comes down to, and the whole model of therapy, right, is to suppressed emotions that people have undealt with, repressed emotions, so that they'll have some traumatic experience in their lifetime and not really know that they have repressed emotions from this, but you take them under hypnosis, and the hypnosis actually only understands in symbols and metaphors. Okay, so, but you take them under hypnosis and try to identify what these traumatic experiences are, bring them up to the cognitive conscious level and deal with them there to have results in our waking state. And also that emotions are actually our subconscious trying to communicate with our conscious waking level. Okay, it's the most profound and prolific, underdiscovered, and because of the way that it got subjugated and categorized with mysticism instead of medical technology, it's still completely understood. But in the 1970s, when these two computer scientists started, they wanted to model for artificial intelligence in the human brain ultimately, and they discovered that these therapists had these profound results with people consistently and fast in their therapy in what it was that they did. And that is how neuro-linguistic programming came to be. So they discovered these other peculiar things about our regular conscious as well as our subconscious. Like our conscious mind is only capable of doing 6 things. And so that's pictures, sounds, taste, smells, feelings, and words. And so words is the inner dialogue, so that we can have a voice in our head. That's the only 6 things that the human mind can do. Pictures, we can envision things, sounds, taste, smells, feelings, and inner dialogue. And so every human is one of 2 models. So we use 6 different regions of our brain that correlate with each one of those things that we're doing. So if in our thought, if we're using an inner dialogue or words, we use one region of our brain. And then if you ask us a question and in our mind we're thinking visual, pictorial things, we use a different region of our brain. So there's 6 things our brains do in 6 different regions. And your therapist or your clinician, all people are one of 2 different models. There's only 2 models. And depending on which one of those 6 things that we're doing with our brain, for instance, every time that we use the inner dialogue or words and voice inside our head, your eyes look the same direction. So I think for some people, it's they look that way, like down and to the right for inner dialogue, and up and to the right for sounds, and straight to the left for pictures. But it's one of the 6 different corresponding regions in your brain, and your eyes always look to that same direction anytime you do those things. So anytime you're recollecting or in your mind thinking of like a voice, your inner dialogue, the voice in your head. Your eyes look to the same direction while you do that. And clinicians design these questionnaires and tests so that they ask you things so that they know if you're trying to recollect a visual or a verbal, like they'll say, what color was your house when you were a kid? So you have to think back to a picture to answer that question, and they'll notice which direction your eyes go. And so then they know which one of the two models you are, which directions you are. You can tell what you're thinking, but it all has to do with our subconscious and our conscious. It is the most fascinating thing. But how it applies on a practical level and what it comes down to is thinking positive is healthy and thinking negative is not. And so I remember one of the examples in the class that I was taking said, so imagine that you're driving by and you see this beautiful big house, this beautiful big mansion. It's just this beautiful estate. And so you're admiring this and you're like, wow, it's just really remarkable, or whatever. But and you go and knock on the door and some young, beautiful couple answers the door. It is not who you would expect to have this house at all. Okay. And so when you think, wow, they must have won the lottery or something to buy this house, or they must have really rich parents or something, or they must sell drugs or have a life of crime. This is the example that the class I learned this from. Remember explicitly this example. When you think something like that, like you're surprised, like, wow, they must have really rich parents, or like, it doesn't make sense that this couple would have all this, they couldn't have, worked and got it, or whatever it is, justifiably had these things, it's just whatever. So, but when we think something about like that, right, when we think something about the unexpected couple that answers the door, that because our subconscious follows the path of least resistance, it has no discernment, and it really does not know ever if you're talking about anything anywhere else ever. It always thinks that you're talking about itself. It cannot represent negation, actually, okay? It cannot represent negation, but it always thinks that you're talking about yourself. So when you have that thought to yourself, not saying anything, but you just have this thought to yourself, thinking they must have really rich parents or some way that they got this, that unless you yourself have really rich parents or win the lotto or submit to a life of crime and get a bunch of money, that you will not have a mansion and a desirable estate like that, just because of the way that the subconscious interacts with our objectionable reality. We learn these things from neuro-linguistic programming, that it's actually the only way that phobias, right, like can even be addressed or cured. But so when you bring people into this somnambulistic state, right, you have to communicate with metaphors or symbols. And so it doesn't understand direct, like a common request for clients will be to quit smoking, right? So you take them under to hypnosis, and it's effective if you communicate this in metaphors and symbols. Then you can't just hypnotize them and say, you don't like cigarettes, you're not going to smoke again, wake up. It doesn't have the lasting effect that communicating in metaphors does. Furthermore, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, because I'm just kind of freestyling this video, but for myths and legends and all of the fantasies and fairy tales and stories and stuff that we hear growing up, and we think, oh yeah, well that could never be true or whatever, yada yada yada, right? Realistically, the thing is that those myths and fairy tales are actually communicating something to our subconscious that cannot be communicated in any other way. This metaphor is speaking to your subconscious, and your subconscious cannot hear or communicate in any other way from this conscious level besides these metaphors. It takes in all experience and all memories, even past lives. But to communicate with it, use these metaphors. And so that's actually what metaphors and myths are doing, is speaking to our higher self, our subconscious, and in a way that we can't speak directly with words, right? And that goes into our inner eye. That's the name of the highest aspect within ourself, right? The subconscious. It's the inner eye. That's why in all language and all written language and spoken languages and all throughout history, no one else can ever address the highest aspect of an individual. You can only address your own divine aspect, your indweller of light, right? The immaculate living light that animates your flesh, your anatomical body, the higher self, the subconscious. Only you can address it, and it is the name I. It's I am. That's why you don't call someone else I. You call us, them, they, who, or whatever else. But you never address someone else's I, their inner I, their divine aspect. And that's why only you can say about yourself, I am. So this is the name of the subconscious, is the I am, the capital inner I. And so it really goes into spiritualism, and that gets away from the clinical aspect. But of course, the two both coincide because there is only one actual, perception of it that isn't false. So, hypnosis is an incredible, absolutely incredible phenomenon. And if anybody wants more resources, please just comment or whatever, and I'll be glad to share some more stuff about it. But the bottom line is, it is critically important to think positive. Also, to look within and stop looking without. Don't get me started, because then it goes into attachments and desires and stuff. But just think positive and think the best about people. Learn to reframe our opinions into curiosity. So, but anyway, I find it so fascinating. So, and it's one of the things I'm learning about. So.